When we have that all sides are congruent and all of the angles are congruent in a polygon, we get a regular polygon. So that means that all of the side lengths are the same and all of the angle measures are the same. So we say that a regular polygon is equilateral, saying same sides, and it's also equiangular, meaning same angle measures. So this is an image of a regular pentagon and an image of a regular hexagon. So 5-sided regular polygon and 6-sided regular polygon. So when you go through teaching elementary school, there are some special kinds of triangles and quadrilaterals that you will need to know. We can first talk about classifying triangles according to their angles. In one case, we can have a triangle containing one right angle, and we call that a right triangle. We could also have 3 acute angles inside of a triangle, and we will call that an acute triangle. And if we have a obtuse angle in our triangle, we call it an obtuse triangle. So these are the 3 ways we can talk about classifying triangles according to their angles. Now we can also classify triangles according to their side lengths. So if we have a triangle with no congruent sides, so all of the sides are different lengths, we call it a scalene triangle. If we have a triangle with at least 2 congruent sides, we call it isosceles. So here we see that this side and this side are the same length, so that it is an isosceles triangle. And finally, if all 3 sides are congruent, then that triangle is called equilateral. So what you'll notice is that a triangle with 3 congruent sides also has at least 2 congruent sides. So every equilateral triangle is also an isosceles triangle. Okay, so moving on to quadrilaterals, one type of special quadrilateral we will discuss is called a trapezoid. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral that has at least 1 pair of parallel sides. So you can see in this shape that the top and the bottom are both parallel to each other. Another special type of quadrilateral is a kite. So a kite is a quadrilateral where the 2 adjacent sides are congruent and the other 2 adjacent sides are congruent. So we have 2 congruent adjacent sides here and 2 congruent adjacent sides here, so that is a kite. We can also have an isosceles trapezoid. So this is a special type of trapezoid where the base angles are congruent. So we end up with 2 adjacent angles being congruent, as well as 1 pair of opposite sides being congruent. Next up is parallelogram. So a parallelogram is a quadrilateral where each pair of opposite sides is parallel. So here, the left and right are parallel to each other, and the top and bottom are parallel to each other. Finally, a rectangle is a parallelogram with a right angle. You might have seen rectangle defined differently. Maybe you would say a quadrilateral where all 4 interior angles are right angles. That's another way you could define a rectangle. But all we need is that opposite sides are parallel and at least one of the interior angles is a right angle, and that will actually force all of the other angles to be right also. Then we can talk about a rhombus. So a rhombus might sometimes get confused with a kite because they kind of look similar, but a rhombus is a parallelogram with 2 adjacent sides congruent. So we have a parallelogram where opposite sides are parallel, and if one of the pairs of adjacent sides is congruent, that will actually, having it be a parallelogram, will actually force all 4 sides to be congruent as well. So a rhombus is actually just a special kind of kite. And then we have a square. A square is a rectangle that has 2 adjacent sides congruent. So again, same with square as rectangle. You might have seen this defined differently in the past, where you say, a square is a quadrilateral with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. That is one way to describe a square, but another way we can describe a square is just by using the definition of rectangle, and which we define to be a parallelogram with at least 1 right angle. And now if we say that two adjacent sides have to be congruent, it will force all four sides to be congruent and all the angles to be right. So we can construct now this hierarchy among different polygons. So what different special types of polygons are actually also other types of polygons. So if we look at the triangle side here, if we start with polygon, we can split it into triangles, which are three-sided, and quadrilaterals, which are four-sided. And between triangles, we have scaling triangles, meaning triangles that are having no sides congruent, so all three sides are different lengths, or we have a situation where at least two of the sides are congruent. And finally, equilateral triangles are also isosceles triangles, because equilateral triangles have three congruent sides and isosceles triangles have at least two congruent sides. So all equilateral triangles are isosceles triangles, all isosceles triangles are triangles, and all triangles are polygons. So I could say that an equilateral triangle is a type of triangle, or it's a isosceles triangle as well. On the quadrilateral side, we have a bit more complex relationships. We can split all quadrilaterals into either kites or trapezoids. We can split the special kinds of quadrilaterals into kites or trapezoids. Kites being where we have pairs of adjacent sides congruent, and trapezoids being where we have at least one pair of opposite sides parallel. If the other pair of sides is also parallel, we get a parallelogram. So a parallelogram is just a extra special trapezoid. So all parallelograms are trapezoids. And isosceles trapezoids are where two adjacent sides or two adjacent angles are congruent. And so all isosceles trapezoids are trapezoids, and all trapezoids are quadrilaterals. Rectangles are those types of quadrilaterals that are both parallelograms and isosceles trapezoids. So if we have a parallelogram with adjacent angles congruent, then we will end up with a rectangle. So rectangles are special types of parallelograms, and all rectangles are also isosceles trapezoids. Rhombuses that have four congruent sides and pairs of opposite parallel sides are special types of parallelograms. So all rhombuses are parallelograms, and all rhombuses are also kites. And then squares are special cases of rhombus, where we have four right angles, and squares are special cases of rectangles, where the sides are all congruent. So all squares are rhombuses, and all squares are rectangles. So all squares are kites, and all squares are trapezoids, and all squares are quadrilaterals. So we have this nice hierarchy among those quadrilaterals.